Hi, this is Dr. Paul. Today I'm going to talk about what science has discovered about happiness that you might not know. This is the second in a 5-video series on happiness, with the first being, is there a real path to happiness? The science and psychology of happiness. In the last few decades, psychology has begun to focus more on well-being, which has given rise to the field of positive psychology. Positive psychology was founded by researchers such as Martin Seligman. This movement began exploring what makes life worth living, not just what seems to go wrong in the mind. Studies have suggested that happiness is influenced by 3 main factors. The first one being genetics, where they attribute that to about 50%. This refers primarily to temperamental characteristics and to the individual's apparent happiness set point, which is much like a baseline mood. Circumstances is the next one, and that's approximately 10%. And this includes money, relationships, health, environment, and which have some effect, but not as much as you would think. And finally, intentional activities, about 40%. These are the choices we make, the habits we build, and the ways we think, and they matter significantly. This means that while we can't control everything, we have remarkable power to shape our own happiness through our mindset and our behaviors. Early in my clinical career as a psychologist, I was told by a patient, my doctor told me I needed to think more positively. I asked her, I said, did he tell you how? And obviously she said no. After much consideration, I came to the conclusion that it's all about focus. I frequently tell my patients, the more you think about stuff, the bigger it gets. It's not that much more complicated than that. Dr. Wayne Dyer said on many occasions, when you change the way you look at things, what you look at will change. So, not only do things expand in depth and importance in accordance to the focus and attention we give them, but they actually create the spectacles of thought in which we view and interpret the world. So the first factor leading toward happiness in the research was genetics, our inherited characteristics. Happiness and genetics, about 50%. Studies have found that each individual seems to have dispositional and temperamental characteristics from birth, which may include what has been described as a happiness set point. This concept became popular in the 1990s through the work of psychologists David Lycan and Och Telligen. However, when it comes to happiness, there's a lot of evidence to support that nature, what we inherit, and nurture, our environment, work together. Studies in the field of epigenetics have found that environmental factors, lifestyle, and developmental stages actually result in changes in gene expression without altering the underlying DNA sequence. In other words, genes can be turned on or off without changing the actual genetic code. What about our circumstances? Some of these studies concluded that they account for possibly 10% of our overall ratings of happiness. Happiness and circumstances, about 10%. Our circumstances do not define who we are or what we can become. A study by Lubomirsky, Sheldon, and Shade in 2005 found that our circumstances may account for approximately 10% of how individuals rate their level of happiness. Ironically, however, happiness is often forged in the fire of hardship. People who endure suffering, illness, loss, and even trauma can emerge with a renewed sense of appreciation and purpose. This has been referred to as post-traumatic growth. Rather than being broken by adversity, some people grow stronger and become more empathetic and more grateful. They learn to savor the small joys, to love more deeply, to live more intentionally. So what about these intentional activities? These same studies conclude that intentional activities may make up approximately 40% of a person's rating of their level of happiness. Intentional activities about 40%. In reality, our life is what we make it. Once again, what we think and what we create is our portrait, and we are the painters. Charles Swindoll once said, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it. We are not passive passengers on this journey through life. Many people believe that major life events define them, such as a new job, relationships, or even a crisis. But in reality, it's the smaller, consistent actions in which true transformation actually takes place. Our life, then, is not an inheritance of the proper genes and circumstances or something we stumble upon. It's something we build. Every intentional act, no matter how small, is another step toward becoming happier and ultimately who we are meant to be. The actress Mae West once said, "You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough." Becoming happy on purpose, intentional activities. Regardless of where we are in our life's journey, we can always take another step along the path toward a happier life. As in any journey, we need fuel and signposts to guide our way. Fortunately, the source of all creation has provided signposts and GPS coordinates in our external environment to guide our way. And internally, the capacity to follow these coordinates as well as the fuel for our journey. I will be bold in proposing that from my experience in working with patients over the last 35 years, intentional activities may possibly account for as much as 70 or 80% of our sense of happiness. And through these intentional activities, we can actually change both our circumstances and even our physiology, as noted by the research in the field of epigenetics. Our genes and physiology provide the template and foundation, not a predestination. Just as with the building, the foundation is the starting point, the base. The actual building is only limited by the creativity of the designer and the desire of the builder. The hedonic principle. Some of the more interesting findings in research on happiness is the phenomenon of hedonic adaptation. Humans have a remarkable ability to adapt to both tragedy and triumph. Our amazing adaptability means that even major life events, such as winning the lottery or even losing a job, often have only a temporary impact on our levels of happiness. We frequently believe I'll be happy when I get a certain job, a new house, a new partner, or maybe some recognition for the things I've accomplished. But the joy doesn't last, it fades, only to be followed by the new desires. We can easily find ourselves on a treadmill toward the next shiny new object. Breaking this cycle requires gratitude, presence, meaning, learning to appreciate what we have rather than what we don't have. Or as Seneca stated, a thankful heart is not only the greatest virtue, but the fountain of joy. Pleasure versus meaning. Not all happiness is created equally. Psychologists differentiate between pleasure-based happiness, which are short-term, joys like eating food and having fun, and meaning-based happiness, such as long-term satisfaction derived from purpose and connection. Studies have found that individuals strictly focused on pleasure tend to feel a deeper sense of emptiness in their lives over time than those engaged in meaningful pursuits, such as volunteering, raising a family, or building something of value. People who focus on more of a meaning-based happiness report a much deeper level of happiness and fulfillment over the long term. One of life's interesting ironies is that meaning often involves discomfort and growth. Raising children can be exhausting. Artistic creation may be frustrating. Serving others can be emotionally draining. Yet those may become some of the most rewarding experiences in life. Well, what about relationships? The role of relationships at the heart of nearly every happiness study is the glaring recognition that relationships absolutely matter the most. Is there any debate that the foundation of true connection is love? And any rational disagreement with Mahatma Gandhi, who concluded, where there is love, there is life. The Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest longitudinal studies ever conducted, followed participants for over 80 years. Its key finding: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. Humans are social creatures. We thrive on connection with others. A happy life seems to be one filled with love, support, and belonging. It doesn't necessarily require dozens of friends or a perfect romantic partner, but rather a few deep, trusting relationships. Loneliness, by contrast, is a significant predictor of unhappiness and even mortality. A study of U.S. adults in the ages 50 to 84 years old found that individuals with a moderate level of loneliness have a 23% increased risk of mortality, and those with severe loneliness had a 36% higher risk. In conclusion, while science has become one of our greatest teachers on our journey toward happiness, it all pales in comparison to the necessity of our relationships with those whom we love. I've composed a little thought about the importance of our human connections. Life finds its greatest meaning in the bonds we weave. In love, we discover tenderness that heals the heart. In friendship, we may find the real joy of recognition that dissolves our loneliness. In family, our roots sustain us when the winds of life blow cold. Relationships are lamps and lifeboats for our journey, hands that lift and hearts that remind us we're never alone. Paul Suzik, PhD. The next video in this series, video 3, explores how universal and spiritual energy can transform your life. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you keep coming back and joining us on our journey toward happiness. This is Dr. Paul.